For the most part, a year before the NFL draft comes around, most scouts know which quarterback prospects are going to be at the top. Last year, everybody knew that J.J. McCarthy, Caleb Williams, and Drake May were probably going to be in that top 3 to 4 range, and we're getting hyped up all offseason long. But every year, there's a quarterback who comes out of nowhere, shocks everybody, and becomes that top-end quarterback prospect or even a top 10 pick. Obviously, a few years ago, we saw that happen with Kenny Pickett. Last year, we saw it with Anthony Richardson. And then a few years ago, the best example was Joe Burrow. He went from an undrafted caliber player to the number 1 overall pick and a franchise dude. Ironically, the guy for this year's class is also from LSU. He also won the Heisman Trophy, put on a show for college football fans, and now is being talked about as a top 5 pick. Today, we're going to talk about the Jayden Daniels sweepstakes. We're going to talk about who this guy is, how he got to this point, why he's being so hyped up in the NFL, and what are some potential drawbacks, pluses, and fits for him in the NFL. But before we get started, if you enjoy NFL draft content or just college football content in general, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, topic, or prospect I can cover in my next one. Now let's get started and talk about the Jayden Daniels sweepstakes. In order to understand how Jayden Daniels got to this point, we quickly need to go through his career and how all his achievements even happened. At a young age, Jayden Daniels wanted to play quarterback, and he wanted to play it at a high level. Luckily, football ran in his veins, as his dad played defensive back at both Washington and Iowa State. He ended up instilling those traits into his son, and they would watch Joe Montana, John Elway, and Warren Moon. As early as 10 years old, Jayden began working with a quarterback trainer, and the two would end up clicking. By the time Jayden was a freshman at Cajun High School, he was so thin that the school required his dad to get approval from a doctor before he could play. His dad said, quote, "The first doctor said absolutely not, so we had to go to a second one." What happened next was one of the best careers in California high school football history. In total, Jayden had 14,000 passing yards, 3,600 rushing yards, and 211 total touchdowns. He also played in 2 state title games. He said, quote, "I'm just blessed I had receivers come through and help me out. I go out there and have fun and try to win football games. That's all." Obviously, Jayden got a ton of hype because of that, and it really started after his junior year. And there was something about Coach Herm Edwards that he really liked. Daniels said, quote, "The first thing is he said he's a man of his word. I didn't really get that from other coaches, and him saying that was showing it meant something to him, and he does it." With Manny Wilkins leaving after the 2017-18 season, Herm Edwards really needed a quarterback for that class, and alongside Daniels, he would sign 2 others. He was the highest rated one, as according to 24/7 Sports, he was a 4-star recruit, the number 1 dual threat quarterback, and the 35th best player in the class of 2019. So how would he end up doing in Arizona State? Well, he'd eventually arrive in 2019 and beat out former 4-star Dylan Sterling Cole for the starting job. The best game of his college career would end up coming against number 6 Oregon, as Daniels threw for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, including that game-sealing 81-yard pass to Brandon Ayuk. This game knocked Oregon out of the playoff. In total, he threw for 2,900 yards with 17 touchdowns and only 2 picks. He also ran for nearly 400 yards and 3 scores on the ground, and for a freshman, he was insane. Unfortunately, he didn't have a great sophomore year. He only played in 4 games in 2020, throwing for 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. Football in the Pac-12 was really weird that year, so he did get the benefit of the doubt. In 2021, he really wasn't much better though, as he had 10 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. He did run for over 700 yards on the ground, but Jayden Daniels' stock went from a future first-round quarterback to now someone no one was even talking about anymore. But there was some stuff going on behind the scenes, as some family issues made him distant on the field, and at times, many thought he didn't care or was a prima donna. It was true he took a more passive leadership role, but it wasn't as it seemed. He wanted to play with future NFL talent, and he also wanted to find out how good he could be, so he decided to enter the portal. He said, quote, "I had the opportunity to come play at the highest level and help a powerhouse win another national championship." Obviously, we're referring to his transfer to LSU. At the time, there wasn't a ton of publicity to it. I feel like if it would have happened after the 2019 season, it would have been everywhere, but because he had 2 down years, no one really cared, to be honest. At the time, he committed to new head coach Brian Kelly, and the roster already included Miles Brennan, Garrett Nussmeier, and Walker Howard. Nussmeier and Howard were both highly recruited, and Brennan had a ton of experience. Kelly said he brought him in to push other quarterbacks, but was not sure if he'd actually win the starting job. When Daniels injured his foot shortly after arriving on campus, Kelly assumed he wouldn't be very tough because he was from the West Coast. But this is where he proved to Kelly that he deserved to be the starter. He'd end up starting the first game against Florida State, and while they lost in a heartbreaker, he'd only improved from there. In total, he threw for 2,900 yards with 17 touchdowns and 3 picks, while also rushing for nearly 1,000 yards as well. LSU would get to the SEC championship game, and he would spend a couple weeks thinking about going to the NFL, but ultimately, scouts were questioning his size and ability, so he met with LSU coach Brian Kelly and asked him, "What do you see and what can I do?" They decided to present a plan for Daniels' weight, a way to make him a better leader, and also improve his technicalities. They said he needed to gain 15 pounds, and that he'd have to have serious improvement in the little things. He said, quote, "I don't want to come back and be the same player. If that was the case, I might as well have left last year." What came next was a Heisman winning season. He ended up throwing for 3,800 yards and 40 touchdowns. He put defenses on notice, and if they would have had a semi-decent defense, they probably could have been a college football playoff team. It definitely would have been fun to see. So now as we go to the NFL, what are the scouts thinking? Well, here's a brief scouting report. The biggest knock on Daniels is his size and how he will handle being hit by NFL defenders. At the combine, he weighed in at 210 pounds and has a 6'4" frame. This definitely raises some injury concerns, and with his high school injury history and his willingness to run, it could be problematic. But his athleticism is also insane, and NFL scouts love it. He has a phenomenal arm, and he showed he was capable of making every throw with great footwork and great accuracy. But the things scouts love the most about him are all his physical traits combined with his mental ones. The NFL raves about his ability to command an offense and his ability to lead everybody on the field. He's also willing to attack and read complex defenses, so it seems like he has an NFL brain with NFL caliber athleticism. He really just needs to bulk up a bit. Aside from his potential injury issues though, there are a couple of downsides to Daniels. He tends to not have a ton of velocity on throws made on the run, which is important for a guy in the NFL, and scouts also point out that he does much better on designed play-action rollouts versus scramble drills where he'll have to make up the play as he goes. Despite having a really good arm and accuracy in the pocket, and having guys like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas to throw deep balls to, he still did occasionally overthrow his receiver, and it happened a little bit too much. Lastly, there are some concerns about how he'll be able to take over a team that doesn't have as much talent. At LSU, he obviously has 2 first-rounders in Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, and at Arizona State, he had Brandon Ayuk, who is now one of the top receivers in the league. In terms of his fit, right now Daniels is being projected as an early first-round pick and one of 3 quarterbacks to be taken first. He probably won't go first though. The top 10 is probably where he's going to end up going, and the team that currently stands out the most at the moment is the New England Patriots. They sit at pick number 3. The Bears are at 1, and most people assume they're going to take Caleb Williams. They assume Drake May will go 2, and then that Daniels will go 3. In terms of his fit with the Patriots, it's an interesting situation because of their quarterback Mac Jones. He was taken in the first round a couple years ago, but has struggled in the NFL since his rookie year. It would make sense for the Patriots to move on from Mac, and with new head coach Gerard Mayo, they might be looking to go in a new direction. The Pats have apparently met with Daniels a handful of times, and they think he could be a great fit at number 3. That's if the Commanders don't decide to take him at number 2. Currently they have Sam Howell, and while he was a big prospect at one point, he's probably not going to cut it for them, and going with a guy like Daniels at number 2 could be a potential option for them. But they're likely to get Drake May. A couple of other teams that make sense for Jayden are the Falcons, the Giants, and the Raiders. All of them are in the market for a new franchise quarterback, as the Falcons currently have Ritter and Heineke, and both of them struggled last year. They also have a new head coach in Raheem Morris, and a lot of the times they like to start with a new quarterback. The Giants have gotten poor play from Daniel Jones, and a guy like Daniels would be much better for that system in my opinion. The Raiders lost the Jimmy Garoppolo experiment, and while Aiden O'Connell did have flash at times, he's probably not the franchise dude, and he seems to be a better backup. In the AFC, you have to have a good young quarterback to succeed, and Daniels could be a good fit for that team. In terms of my overall thoughts, wherever Daniels goes, it'll be interesting to see if he matches the same level of success he had last year with LSU. He's kind of been overshadowed by Caleb Williams, and for some reason scouts are in love with Drake May. I don't necessarily think Jayden Daniels is an unbelievable prospect, but he is good, and I think he actually has a decent shot at succeeding in the NFL. If he can develop without getting injured, I think he can have a pretty good career. For the most part, the Patriots have been a pretty well-run organization, and Gerard Mayo seems to know what he's doing, so if he goes to the Pats, has a decent offensive line, and is actually given the proper tools to develop, he could be pretty good. If he went to the Commanders, I'd probably say he'll be a bust, and if he went to the Bears, I'd definitely say he'll be a bust. But that's mostly because of the organization, and not necessarily him. Ultimately, most people were worried about whether he'll be able to stay healthy or not, and we'll find that out pretty quickly. He could get banged up his rookie year, he could have a life-changing injury his rookie year, or he can be like Michael Penix was over the last 2 years and miraculously figure out a way to not get hurt. Daniels was definitely the best quarterback in college football last year, and after winning the Heisman, there's always a place for a guy like that in the NFL. It's not an easy award to win. Overall, I'm excited to see what Jayden Daniels can do. He has a great story, and I think the future is bright for him. But what do you guys think? If you're an NFL or an LSU fan, what do you think of Jayden Daniels? Where does he fit? Will he be a bust? And And also, what other prospects should I take a look at next? I may do this for all the top quarterbacks, so be sure to let me know what I should do next. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.